when I was 9 years old. And suddenly I realized I was poor. My classmates were mostly white guys. And I was one of the few Asians in the class. And these guys, their fathers owned the banks, they owned the plantations, they owned the car dealerships, they owned the meat packing company, they owned the ranches. And I'm going, how come my dad doesn't own that? So I remember raising my hand when I was 9 years old, talking to my fourth grade teacher, and I said, when am I going to learn about money? And she was this woman who should have retired 50 years earlier. She was so sick and tired of kids by this time. I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, go ask your father. He's my boss. So my father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I asked him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. But he says, if you want to learn about money, why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? And I said, why? That's Mike. So why ask him? He says, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm a government employee. And I went, oh, what's the difference? He says, the difference is an entrepreneur must know about money, or they're no longer entrepreneurs. And he says an employee doesn't have to know anything about money, because the government will take care of them, the company will take care of them. So I'm all confused. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old. Teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid. But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And finally, through persistence, my rich dad started teaching me about money on one condition. And that condition was he would never pay me. He says, the moment I pay you, you think like an employee. He says, that's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. And now I'm 9 years old, my head's going cracking in half. He says, you never want a paycheck. I said, so how do I learn about money? So he would just break out a Monopoly game board. So I would work for free. I was an apprentice, basically. And he would teach me about money. But the way he taught me about money was playing Monopoly. And finally, one day I got upset. I said, when are you going to teach me about money? He says, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He goes, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He says, what do you think we're doing? I don't know. I'm teaching about money. And then that's when we have one green house. He says, there's many formulas for great success in money. There's thousands of them. But one of the best ones found on the game of Monopoly. It still is today. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. I said, what? He says, one of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. And he says, what do you think I'm doing? And I went, I don't know. So then he took me out, he showed me his greenhouses. And 10 years later, when I was 19, I was now in school in New York, and I come back to Hawaii, and Rich Dad had bought the biggest piece of land smack dab in the middle of Waikiki Beach. And when you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll see the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That was his hotel. He says, the moment you accept a paycheck, your brain goes dead. He just got paid. He says, as long as you're hungry, you'll think. And he was a great teacher. So today when people ask me what I do, they know me as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I just say I play Monopoly. So I own greenhouses, I own big hotels, I own oil wells, golf courses, businesses. I'm just playing Monopoly. That's all I do. I wrote was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So Cash Flow came out in 1996. And Money and Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out in 97. So the real fact of the matter is cash flow is about accounting. The school system was designed to teach you to be an employee, which is important, or a doctor or a lawyer, a specialist, but never about money. When people ask me, how did your rich dad learn this when your poor dad, a PhD, didn't? And the answer is very simply, my rich dad was my best friend's father. His father died when he was 13. So Rich Dad had this family business at 13 to run. So he had to drop out of school, which was his blessing. There's blessings, and sometimes a blessing doesn't look like a blessing, but it turned out to be a blessing. And then his teachers became his bookkeeper, his accountant, his attorney, his banker, his real estate agents. I got into arguments with the accounting teacher because the accounting teacher didn't know accounting. I knew more about accounting than him because I actually worked in bookkeeping in my rich dad's companies. And so I'm not an accountant, but I understand accounting. My accountants, my attorneys, they're in it every single day. That's how I learn, because every day I'm solving problems in my business. So I have accountants and attorneys and bankers and all these people on speed dial because I'm solving problems with my team. My PhD daddy says, "What do you think I am, made of money? I can't afford that." And my rich dad would say, "That's why he's poor." Poor people say, "I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time." Because it's an escape. The way you get rich is you solve other people's problems. Every time I failed, it was like, good. I said, okay, what have I learned? And the average person, the reason they're poor is they haven't failed. They play it so safe. They haven't made any mistakes like they taught in school. That means they don't learn anything. That's why the school system's actually fundamentally corrupt. It's anti-education. Don't make mistakes and don't ask for help. And if I didn't ask for help, I have my accountants, my attorneys, my bankers, and all that. But the average guy is standing there, "Oh, I'm an A student. I'm going to do this all on myself." The game of business is played with accountants, attorneys, bankers, hate to say it, politicians. You got to know the game.